Hello. Good afternoon, and welcome to Purpose Center Leadership Live. If you're just joining us, please put in the comments what city or state or country you are joining from. I'd love to know. And if you are having, if my video is going out, please let me know. Last week, my video went out and I didn't know. So if my video is going out or my connection is bad, let me know. I'd love to know. So as you're hopping on, just introduce yourself. Just say where you're calling in from. Today we're talking about communication chaos, right? So I'd love to hear from you guys as we go along. So let me know where you're calling in from. Or where you're watching from, what city, what state. Okay, Maka. Hello, Mazar. Nice to have you here. It's going to give it another few seconds, maybe like another minute, and see if we can get some others to join us. Hello, Zambia. Hi. How are you, California? Charlotte. Yay. I'm always happy when I see Charlotte because that's where I'm at. Hey, Charlotte. Hi, Mia. Tabitha, Teresa, North Carolina. Hey, Flo, how are you? New Hampshire, Somalia, Kentucky, Colombia, Zambia. Great to have you. I love my international people. South Carolina, just down the street. Good to have you here, Debbie. California, South Africa, Iowa. Yay! Today, we're going to be talking about communication chaos. We're talking about the top 10 mistakes that leaders make. And we've gone through 4 already. If I can remember, I think the first one was top-down leadership. I think we talked about last week, no room for mavericks. We also, let me see, jog my memory, putting people work over paperwork. We talked about that. And then we talked about the decision-making process. So today we're going to talk about, we're talking about the absence of affirmation. So today we're talking about communication chaos. So how many of us know that lack of communication in leadership or in your company, in your organization is a recipe for disaster? Effective communication is key. And also where there are many different ways to communicate, right? It's written, it's verbal, it's nonverbal, it's your attitude, it's your tone, it's your cadence, it's all these different things. So we're going to let me see what time it is. We're going to dive into some of that right now. And I'm going to look to see if I can see your comments coming up. So one of the things I'm going to jump off with is that sometimes it's not what you say, but what you did not say that becomes the issue. So I want to start right there, because when we hear the term communication, right, we're always thinking about what are we saying, right? What are we saying? But sometimes it's not what we say, is what we do not say that becomes the issue. And let me tell you a key way that this shows up in organizations. So there is something going on in corporate, right, in your company, and your boss or your leader says nothing, but as an employee, there's something going on. So what do? You begin to fill in the blanks, right? You begin to make assumptions as an employee. And then the grapevine gets started, right? And then the water cooler talks start going. And the reason is because of what the leader has not said. So if you are a leader watching this broadcast today, right? And you're having a problem with the water cooler, or you're having a problem with the grapevine, you can stop that problem immediately by simply communicating more. You cannot over communicate as a leader. Okay, let me just say this again. You cannot over communicate as a leader. It's better to over communicate than to under communicate. And like I said, sometimes it's not what you say, but what you do not say. There's always an active grapevine or rumor mill in companies, especially if the company is, let's say, 3 to 5 years old, over 3 years old. In a brand new company, brand new organization, it's not established because everyone's talking. The communication is very, flexible. It's very quick. It's very oral. It's very, informal. So there's no point for a grapevine. There's no need for it. But as companies get more established, right, the grapevine becomes active. The rumor mill becomes active, and it becomes important that leaders shift their communication from the informal, verbal, talking across the cubicle or talking across the office, to more formal communication, more memos. And we're not trying to paper anyone to death, but the more things that you put in writing and formalize, the better. Okay. So let me just put some comments up here. Melvin says communication chaos, very timely. All right, Melvin, tell us more about why it's timely. Let's see. Mazara says communication has always been a tool based to ladder up over successive steps in every organization. Communication is very important because if ineffective communication, I've worked with a lot of companies and a lot of CEOs too, and ineffective communication has created so much chaos in organizations because CEOs sometimes feel like, look, they don't have time for it, right? The truth is, if you don't have time for it, you're going to end up paying for it in dissatisfied workers, and like I said, also in people misinterpreting what you are not saying because you didn't say something. It's going to be, you're going to have just like glut in the system. It's a real nightmare. So I'd rather a leader over communicate than under communicate. So one other thing I notice in companies, right? When I work with companies and I work with CEOs, I notice that many times leaders tend to do a lot more external communication than internal communication. So they're communicating their brand to the world or to social media, or they're saying how good they are to the world, and they're communicating what is up next to the world. But let me ask you, how many people want to know that your company is in trouble from watching CNBC at night, right? And this has happened to many companies, right? Many employees, right? So especially publicly traded companies, your company's in trouble. There has been no internal communication to prepare the team, the staff, the employees, the core. However, that spokesperson, that leader is caught out there on CNN or CNBC or in the news talking about the difficulties and the challenges that the company is having, and that there may possibly be a layoff. Now, that has happened, friends. And that's because a lot of these companies spend more time trying to mind their public image, trying to put that face out there, that best foot out there, and they're not minding the internal communications. So I remember also too, I remember I did a video once. I was critiquing Elon Musk because he had sent an email to his team at 1 a.m. in the morning, right? And it wasn't a good email either. It was an email talking about, at the time, that there may have to be some, there were some issues with the company. It was not a positive email. And I was thinking, wow, he can't sleep. So he's writing at 1 a.m. And it's not exactly good news. And it's not the most effective way to communicate bad news, especially when you're that big. The reasons why we have managers in companies, in large companies, is that the leader, right, a great leader, first communicate with their, manager levels, so that the manager, and get the managers to buy in to any kind of bad news. And the managers then can communicate that down to the team. What I've seen in some mid-sized companies, right, as I work with some of these companies, and the smaller companies, you'll have a leader, right? And I'm putting leader up here, top guy, founder, CEO level, bypassing the manager level and communicating new information to people beneath the manager level. That's ineffective communication. That just creates chaos. That creates ill will. That just looks unprofessional. Leaders need to follow their own chain of command. Okay. So someone's asking, what form of communication is most effective? Balpreet, it all depends on the age of your organization. So if you're just starting out, mom and pop entrepreneurial venture, upstart, it's okay at that time to have the informal verbal communication, oral communication. It's okay at that level. As you begin to add team members and you're getting to the 6, 7, 8, 10 people, you need to be a little bit more formalized, right? You need to communicate both in writing and at regular meetings, right? At the regular staff meeting. But you need to start to communicate in writing so people have accountability because they have something in writing. What happened is when you're communicating just verbally, if I'm not there that day at work when you communicated verbally, then I didn't know. So I can't be responsible for what I don't know. But if it's in writing, it's on my email, right? Or it's a memo on my desk, I am more responsible as an employee for what I have heard. And so it just depends on the stage where your company's at. But even in a small company, it's always good to have something written. Let's see. Ineffective communication when the level of profession gets bypassed. Yes, into over communication. But I've seen that. It is distasteful. Again, when a leader cuts the manager level out and communicate to people underneath the manager level with new information, that's not the way to do that. That just creates chaos. So communication too, if you're going to do verbal communication, it's also about your tone, right? Your body language, cadence, these things are part of communication. So I could be, saying something like if I'm going to deploy bad news to my team, right? There's a certain way I need to deploy that bad news. I need to have empathy, right? I need to be sensitive that I may be having a layoff in the organization. That needs to be done with a lot of seriousness, right? It can't be casual. That shouldn't just be a memo either. I believe it should be a memo and a meeting. And maybe even meetings broken down into smaller sizes so people can understand. When I run my organization, my husband and I, we run a law firm together for 20 years, and I run another charity in between that for about 16 years. We sometimes had to deliver bad news. I remember we had lost a major account. And so that account had, I would say, about 15 people who were working on that account. And I had no replacement account. So this was bad news indeed. And we kind of saw it coming, and we did everything that we could to ward that off, right? And we kept it very open. When we saw it coming, we began to communicate that with our team, like, this is not looking good. This company, our client, is in trouble. They're in trouble. And it's going to affect us. It's going to impact us. And we did everything that we could. And we were number one for this client, but this client had some trouble. And so we got let go. We lost this account. This account was worth over $1 million a year. So we had the hard job of laying off, I think it was 10 people. And some of these folks were with us for a long time. It was very difficult. So empathy was what we had to call on. We had to call on understanding. We had to call on how we can, how can we place them somewhere else? Who can we give severance? So we didn't have a lot of money for severance, but who can we help out in this area? How can this be done in a way that's, that's humane, right? This wasn't this wasn't a thing you could communicate via a memo and tell people, sorry. This required, 2 weeks, of getting that conversation started, going, listening to people one-on-one, having a true open door policy, true listening mode. And obviously we were impacted financially as well. So our feelings were genuine. This was a genuine shock to our system. And we expressed that to our people, and everyone knew. We were very fair about it. So delivering bad news, there's a way to do that too. Too many companies look at people as if they are, I don't know, cogs in a wheel or something, that they're not human. And so, someone losing their job to a company may feel like it's just a numbers game. I have to cut you because I have to, my bottom line doesn't look too good. But if I cut my staff, I can look better. But we're cutting humans, right? Who pay rent or mortgage, who have kids in school. So when you're cutting anyone, and especially if you're doing any kind of mass cutting, the way you communicate that is very important. It should be in writing, but also to the best of your abilities to also be in person, at meetings, at town halls, whatever. So let's see. Somebody else here says, Cherie says, many bosses mistake micromanagement for communication, mostly those who want control within their organization versus empowerment. Over communication is simply ensuring clarity, no one was missed, etc. Micromanagement is telling people what to do down to the details. One allows for empowerment, one does not. Great point. Great point. And we're not talking about micromanagement here, like Cherie says. Great point. Over communication is not micromanagement, right? Over communication is to, like Cherie says, is for clarity, right? It's also to show respect. It's to show care. It's to show that you care, that your team is informed. Okay. One other point I want to make too. I actually have 4 more points. And so keep your comments coming. I'm hoping I don't miss too many of them. As an organization grows, right? The original group of founders, when you start a company, you have the original group of founders, the boss and, all of those who started with the boss. As a company grows, that group, that original group can become a little bit more like a clique, right? Like a clique. They have all the answers, right? They know the history of the company. They know how it started. They know all the ins and outs. And they can become more like a clique where they speak their own language. That was developed through relationships. The problem with that is, as you're bringing on new people, it can become very polarizing when the original group wants to remain like that family unit, and then we have the outsiders, right? And so many times when you are a mom and pop or a new startup that's now maturing, you need to bring in people like myself. This is not a shameless plug, but you need to bring in consultants, right? Because you're now going to be transitioning from one phase to the other. Your communication has to change. Your processes have to change. Your leadership must change. How you work with teams must change. And many companies, they continue with this hybrid model where we have the clique, the inner circle, and then we have everyone else. And it creates, again, a lot of miscommunication and a lot of communication chaos. Let's see. The decision-making process. Now, communication, again, I want to make another point. Crisis management in communication, right? Believe me, communication is a very large topic. Crisis management in communication. It doesn't matter how small or how large your company is, there is going to be a crisis at some point that requires, again, at that point, clear, concise, and also accurate communication. And so if your team is, let's say, I don't know, 8 and up, right? You should already have a crisis management in place. And crisis can be as simple as there was a defective product, or the service didn't deliver what you promised, and so people are now talking about you online. That's a crisis. And crisis in the old days, right, was when Tylenol had that cyanide issue. That was a crisis. Crisis nowadays is you just doing something wrong, or you just not having a satisfactory product or a service. Crisis is now someone's blasting you online blasting your company, writing bad reviews, that's a crisis. And so you need to also have a crisis management communication policy. Who is the person assigned to do that? That should be determined by your leader, and that person alone should be the one to communicate what's going on. They take their cues, that communication person take their cues from the leader, right? But they're the ones that is handling that crisis. And again, you're not too small as an organization to start thinking about your crisis communication problem. Also, I'll take some more comments, but also, if you are a new leader watching this today, right? So you are a new leader from the outside. You are brand new to this organization. You are hired in a management position or a leadership position. It is very, 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 very important that you communicate to the people your leadership style. Okay? You need to communicate what is your leadership style. Don't make the assumption that people will just get it. The last leader may have been a servant leader or a transactional leader or a relationship leader or a transformational leader, and you may be a different kind of leader, right? It is very important as a leader, your first leadership job should be to communicate your leadership style. So here's how important this is. So I recently hired a virtual assistant, right? And she may be on the line with me right now. So I recently hired a virtual assistant. And when we were doing the interview, I was interviewing her. It was time for her to ask me questions. She asked me, what is my leadership style? Right? Now, this is a virtual assistant. This is somebody who I'm going to see maybe once or twice per month in person. It's a remote work. But she asked me a very, very important question that really endeared me to her. She said, what is your leadership style? And I thought, that's an interesting question. So I told her what my leadership style was. And it was important to her to know, to see if I was going to be a fit, if we were going to be a fit together, right? So, and this is for me in a virtual environment. So imagine then, if you please, that you are a leader in an organization where your team is seeing you all the time. They're seeing how you communicate. They're seeing how you walk around or not walk around your office. They're seeing your door closed or not closed. They don't understand you. So as a new leader, your first leadership mission should be to communicate that. What is your style? And if you are already in the position, 2 months, 3 months, it's never too late to explain to people what are your expectations as a leader, what is your style, and how do you like to be communicated with, and what is your communication style. But every leader needs to hear this, that you can always communicate better. It's this balance between leaders having so much work to do, right? And so they don't have time for the communication. But the problem is you're buried in work, paperwork, and then the people work is not happening. But it's the people who's generating this paperwork, and it's the people who are bringing in the business. All right. So, I have actually, let me read this one. Many bosses mistake micromanagement. Okay, we already did that. Let me bring up Xavier. Xavier is on the line with us right now. And Xavier was actually one of the people, one of my ex-employees who was with my company when I had to do that massive layoff, right? And he was saying, and thank you, Xavier, he remembered that we both handled it with so much grace and wisdom. So here's one of my ex-employees, who I have not paid to be on this call. Xavier's in Florida, I'm in Charlotte. I haven't seen Xavier since the time of the layoff, which was 2014. This is 7 years later, right? But it still impacts me. And I am glad to know that Xavier could be in the audience and say it was handled with much grace and wisdom. He could easily have said, no, you guys didn't. And we felt left out. And so I am just, just reminding leaders that your footprint, right? It stays, right? The way how you you work with your team. It's a small world, especially nowadays when people, your ex-employees, can go online and write really nasty things about you and about your organization. So better to over communicate. Listening. Listening is also communication. So what does that look like? So I'm communicating with you if you're talking to me, right? This is my office, right? And you walk through my door and you're trying to communicate with me, but I'm still writing. I'm still on my computer. I'm looking off to the side. I am doing I'm not really listening. I'm not really actively listening to you. That is communication. Or I'm listening, but I'm cutting you off, right? Because I'm on to the next topic. I'm not even absorbing or embracing what you're saying. That's communication. And that's telling when I do that to you, my employee or my peers, fellow leaders, what I'm essentially saying to you really is that your time is not worth it to me. That my time is more valuable than you. I want you out of my office. I want you gone. What you're saying is not that important to me. And so listening, how we listen is also part of how we communicate. So it's not just so much what you say. Again, it's what you're not saying. It's how you're saying it. It's how you're listening. And you can know when someone's actually listening to you actively if they can reframe or rephrase or recreate what you have just said to them. And what I like to do as a leader is when I'm listening, so that you know that I'm hearing you and that I respect you, I like to recreate what you said just so that you know I got it. And in case I didn't get it right, you have an opportunity to actually correct me. And so that's another way of communicating. Let's see. Active listening. Marcus says, once you put in the work to find out what your leadership style is, you can lead and communicate more effectively. Absolutely, 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 Marcus. And Sudarsan says, crisis communication, but how much it should be transparent. This can lead to healthy crisis communication at the place. How much should it be transparent? Well, if you're in a crisis, it's already out there, right? So when you're in crisis mode, the horse is through the gate, Sandarsan. So you might as well figure out before the crisis happens what happens in a crisis. Who is the point person? How is that communication done? And that should be communicated again to your team. If your team sees something online, if there's something going on, you want to let your team know not to communicate on behalf of the organization. There is a point person who communicates on behalf of the organization. And that's something that should be taught to your team and reminded, right? And when the crisis happens, right? When the crisis happens, it goes in effect right away. And everyone knows their role. Let's see. So is listening in listening way is a gesture feature effective? When you say gesture feature, what do you mean, Mazar? Do you mean gesture with your hands, or what do you mean? If you could just put it in a comment for me, I'd like to answer that, but I don't know what you mean exactly. Yvonne says, I usually recommend personality type testing as a first step. Some people do that. They take the personality test. Here's my thing with that, Marco, right? Marcus. I don't know who Yvonne. Marcus. I don't know. I guess you guys are answering each other. So here's my thing about personality tests, Marcus, right? They're good. They're good as a benchmark. But too many people rely on them too much. What do I mean? I'm an 8 on an Enneagram, or I'm a C, or I am in DISC, or I'm a gold in colors, or I'm a whatever, Myers-Briggs, whatever that is. It's almost like labeling to me. I understand from a management perspective, it can be helpful, but it can also put people in a box too, because you don't know that if when the person was taking that test, if they made up answers, if they were having a bad day, if it was a bad season. So now they're labeled an 8 or a 7 or a D or an I or whatever, but that may not really be their true personality. So it's a guide, but I don't particularly rely on those. Let's see. Giving wrong information and acting as if things aren't in place, definitely polarizing. Okay. Keeping communication open between old and new group is crucial. Very, very crucial. So, I'm going to take a couple more of these comments on here, but I will just leave it to say, it doesn't matter what stage of growth your company is in, start to take a second look at how you're communicating, right? Even when you're communicating, let's say you're communicating via Slack or one of these, channels, right? Microsoft Teams. Be mindful of how you're communicating there as well. Be mindful of your tone. Be mindful of your content. Be mindful of, your response time. Because if you're not responding to people's requests, it's also a lack of communication, right? So it's still a communication problem. Be mindful of your follow-up time. Set proper expectations. If you're a busy CEO or a busy founder or a busy manager, tell people that they'll hear from you in 24 to 48 hours, but give them an expectation so they're not waiting for you for 2, 3, 4, 5 days and haven't heard from you, right? So communicating even how you communicate is important. So if your response time is 2 days, let people know it's 2 days. And so I just want to end on that note and to remind you guys that this is what I do. I'm a coach and I'm a consultant. I coach CEOs and entrepreneurs, founders, nonprofits, for-profit, and I also work with their teams and their organizations with strategy, help them with clarity, help them with these communication issues. And so the way to get a hold of me, if you're on this PCL page, there is a link above to my website. Go ahead and send me a inbox or send me book a time on my calendar or send me an inbox here and a DM here on LinkedIn. I'm Sharon Gill. If you want to send me a friend request, and we can DM there as well. But definitely, you can also book a free 30-minute call today. There is a link that we placed in the comment feed. So there's multiple ways for you to get a hold of me. And what I noticed in my recent poll on this page is that this page has a lot of managers. And managers, you're in the unfortunate place of being in the middle. You are in the middle of top leader, and the employee. And a lot of times communication issues really get log jammed here, right? You're in a tough spot. And so as managers, I would say, make that investment in your own leadership. You may have the title of manager, but you're also a leader. And because you are leading people beneath you, right? You're leading a team with the title of manager, but you're leading a team. And you definitely need to communicate a lot more, effectively than the team that you follow, right? The team that you lead. So again, if you want to get a hold of me, go on my website, SharonGill.com. There's a link as well on the profile page here. And we'll see you back next week. I usually go solo 1 week and then I have a guest the following week. We're doing the top 10 mistakes that leaders make. So tune in next Monday and every Monday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much for your support and God bless.